I really didn't like the layout of this class. I felt like this session could have been utilized by the school in a different way. I saw nurse residency jobs being posted in mid-January, and then when I went back at the beginning of February, they were taken down. So those are already opportunities that some students are missing out on because they're so bogged down with the work and collaborative. They're just trying to tread water. They're just trying to stay above their work. It takes a lot of extra effort to make sure all of our work is done because there's a lot of work in this class, and then to use time to apply to jobs. I really wish that the focus of this time with school was prepping us for job placements. And then I wish that capstone was really just focusing on us passing the NCLEX. It just felt like a busy work class, and it felt like a hurdle that I had to jump over to get my degree. It didn't actually feel like I learned anything in this class, or that it helped me prepare for the NCLEX, or that it helped me prepare for the real world, unfortunately. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you're new to my channel, my name is Melissa and I'm a nursing student. So I attend Chamberlain University and I just finished taking collaborative healthcare. If you're a Chamberlain student, the course code for that is NR446. I just finished taking it, and so this video is going to be about my experience taking the class, but more importantly, the course layout and what to expect once you get here. Now, I will be completely transparent with you guys. As of me filming this video, I have not yet finished the course. I am filming this video a bit prematurely because I'm anticipating being very busy toward the end of the session. I still have 2 more weeks to go. I'm in my final 2 weeks anyway. So I don't know what my final grade is as of me filming this video, but I will go ahead and put it in the description box below, or I will put it right here, what my final grade was, what I ended up finishing the class with. So this video is going to be broken down into a couple of different sections. First, I'm going to talk about the exams in this course. I'm also going to talk about the assignments in this course. I'm going to talk about the clinical and my clinical experience. And then at the end, I'm going to kind of give like a reflection, which I don't normally do, but just kind of like a reflection / my feedback on this course, just because going into it, I didn't know what to expect. And I think a lot of people don't. And so to make things easier for you guys, I'm sectioning off the video. I created video chapters. So if there's any portion of the video that you want to skip over or skip ahead to, it just makes it that much easier for you guys to do. So you can skip ahead in the little bar down below, or you can go down to my description box and just kind of jump ahead to whatever you would like to hear me talk about. Okay, so now to get started with the video. First off, I will say I was extremely excited to take this class, because if you're a Chamberlain student, then I'm sure that you've heard of like the C classes or the final C classes. And so I think for some students that's complex health, collaborative health, and then the final course is capstone. From my cohort, usually when we talk about the C classes, we're talking about the final 2 classes, which is collaborative health, which I just finished taking, and then capstone, which is the last class. And so that means that you're in your final semester, so it's a really big deal to reach collaborative and to reach the C classes. So I was really excited to enter this class. Now, this class was different than any other class that I've taken at Chamberlain for a few different reasons, and I will get into that in the video, but mainly the layout of this class was completely different. And then another thing was that Chamberlain, I don't know if it's just my campus or if it's all campuses throughout the nation, implemented some changes. Some changes took effect last session or the session before, but there were some new changes to the curriculum and to the way that we do things, and that was implemented this session. So that was also different. But I'll get into that as we go along in the video. So first things first, I'm going to talk about the exams in this class. So first off, that's one thing that Chamberlain started doing, at least my campus started doing this session. We now have to take any exams that we're taking on campus, we now have to take them in our uniform. So we have to come in our full scrubs, white shoes, hair up, like our traditional uniform that we would go to the hospital with. We now have to come on campus and take our exams in those uniforms. There are rumors for why this is. I don't want to speak on that because I don't know the rationale for it, but that was one thing that was different this session. It was implemented like the last couple weeks of the session, so I had to do that for the final 2 weeks of the class. But aside from that, this class really was mostly exams. There were no quizzes in this course. There were 6 exams in this class, which is a lot because my classes are condensed into 8-week sessions. So this class is only 8 weeks, and there are 6 exams in this 8-week course. So it felt like I was taking an exam every single week of the class, which was extremely stressful. So the first exam, just like any nursing class at Chamberlain, was the medical calculation exam, or the MedCalc exam for short. Now that's given the first night of class in every single nursing class at Chamberlain, and you have to pass it in order to proceed with the class. If you're not able to pass it, then you will fail the class and you'll have to retake it. Now, I don't want to scare you guys if you don't attend Chamberlain yet, if you're looking to attend Chamberlain. If you do not pass on the first try, you have to do a mandatory remediation, and then you have a second attempt to take it. And if you don't pass on the second attempt, then I believe that you have a third and final attempt to take it. So it's not just like a one and done type of thing. Now, for the lower level classes at Chamberlain, passing is different. So it's a 20 question exam, 20 points, and you have to get a 16 out of 20 in the lower level nursing classes in order to pass the MedCalc exam. As you get farther along into the program and you get into higher classes, eventually you'll need a 17 out of 20, 18 out of 20, 19 out of 20 to pass. Collaborative healthcare is the first class where you have to get 20 out of 20, so 100% a perfect score in order to pass the exam. And it's the same for capstone. So once you get to your last semester of nursing school at Chamberlain, you will need 100% on the MedCalc exam in order to pass. Now, one thing that was different for me this session was that if you didn't pass the MedCalc exam on the first night of class, they had, like, inside of the building, inside of the campus, they actually had a sim lab that was going on. So right after you failed the exam, you could go straight up to the sim lab and do your remediation right then and there. I was very fortunate. I passed my exam on the first try, but I like this because there have been classes where I have unfortunately failed the exam, and then I had to schedule a time for me to come to campus during the weekday. So I'd have to take off of work, drive an hour to campus, do remediation just to be able to retake the exam. So I really liked that this session, for whatever reason, they actually had tutors or instructors available on site. So if you failed your exam, you could just go straight to remediation and you could retake your exam. I much prefer that because then you don't have to be taking off of work and trying to find a time to come back to campus. Now, the second exam in this class was also administered in week 1. This was actually a take-home exam. It was a standardized exam that you do at home. It was our clinical judgment exam, and the exam was not graded. So if you've seen my previous videos, or if you were a Chamberlain student, then you already know the ungraded clinical judgment exams. You take them at home, even though you don't get a grade for it. It's okay. You do get a grade for it, but your grade does not go into the grade book. So it does not positively or negatively impact your overall grade in the course. What they do with that score is that once you take the exam, you go online and you see a diagnostic report. The diagnostic report will not only tell you what percentage you got on the exam, but it breaks down the exam into different topics. So you may have stuff on maternity, you may have stuff on pharmacology, clinical judgment and leadership. It breaks down to each topic that was on the exam, and it gives you a percentage that you did on each topic. So essentially, it's kind of like an NCLEX review because it'll tell you what areas you're weak in and what areas you're strong in. Now, even though your grade for that exam does not go into the grade book, depending on how well or how poorly you do on that exam, you have to do a mandated remediation. The worse you do on the exam, the more work that you will have to do for remediation. And I'll get into that in the next section of the video when I'm talking about assignments in the class. But for right now, just know the second exam that you take in this class, the grade does not go into the grade book and you do it at home. Now, the third exam that was taken in this class was a clinical judgment exam. This exam we took on campus in the classroom. Of course, it was recorded. The exams you take at home are also recorded, but when you go to class and take an exam, not only does your camera have to be on, but of course your professor serves as your proctor, and they were walking around the room just to make sure that no one is cheating. So this was a clinical judgment exam, third exam that we took in the class, and this grade did go into the grade book, but it was not like a heavy grade. It was only out of 50 points. So the fourth exam that we took in this class was administered in week 4, I believe. So it was basically a midterm, and it was our midterm. It was exam 1. And I know that sounds weird that the 4th exam we took in this class was titled exam 1, but this was the first exam that we had in the course that was actually on collaborative health. Now, of course, the first exam that we took, like I said, was the MedCalc exam, and then the next 2 exams were kind of like an NCLEX prep exam, so they were very broad. They were on a multitude of different topics. Exam 1, which is the 4th exam that you get in the class, it serves as a midterm, that exam was on the things that we were actually learning in that class, so the stuff that we were learning in collaborative health. And there's always the question, what is collaborative health? I always hear students asking that. Essentially, when you are in healthcare, of course we are nurses, but when we are working in the hospital or when we're going to be working in any healthcare facility, it's a whole interdisciplinary team. So yes, of course you have nurses. You have nurses with their bachelor's degree, you have licensed practical nurses or LPNs, you have techs or nursing aides, you'll also have doctors and just different team members. And so when you're in collaborative health, it's kind of like learning how to work with who your future coworker is going to be. So not only other nurses, that is of course a big portion of it, but you're also kind of learning how to interact and engage and take care of patients alongside with other disciplinaries or other healthcare professionals. So of course I'm not going to go over topics that were on the exam because I don't want to enter the realm of cheating, but when you think about the topic of collaborative healthcare, you want to think about you as the nurse. You're going to be delegating tasks to your unlicensed assistive personnel, to your LPN. You're going to need to contact the doctor. So a big part of this class is knowing what is within your scope. What are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? And the things that you're not allowed to do or you don't have to do, what are you able to delegate and who are you able to delegate it to? So all of those things kind of go into collaborative healthcare. In addition to leadership, leadership is a big thing because if you're delegating tasks, which will be within our scope of practice as nurses, you do need to have leadership skills. And so that all kind of encompasses, in short, in my own words, what collaborative healthcare is. And so the 5th exam that we took was a clinical judgment exam on leadership that we took at home. And again, the grade that we got on this did not go into the grade book, but depending on what grade we got, that depended on how much relearning or how much remediation that we'd have to do later. And then the 6th and final exam was another clinical judgment exam. This one was administered in the classroom, and this one was actually entered into our grade book, although this was only out of 50 points. And this was taken in the 7th week of class, so this essentially served as our final exam. So now we're going to get into the assignments portion of this class. Again, this class was different than any class that I've ever taken at Chamberlain, and a big part of the reason for that is because of the assignments. There were no papers in this class. There was no RUA, which is a project that you usually have at the end of each class, which could be a paper, it could be a presentation, could be group work. There was none of that. So there were no projects, no papers, nothing. The only assignments in this class were our Edapts and our relearning assignments, which I will get into. So first I'll go into the relearning assignments, and I will make a chapter for this. If you already know what this is, you can go ahead and skip over to the Edapts section. But for the relearning assignment, so all of those exams that I mentioned during the exam portion of this video, especially the ones that you took at home where the grade that you got did not go into the grade book. So you take your percentage, and depending on what percentage or how well you did on those exams, depending on how much remediation you had to do. So remediation came in 2 forms for this class and every nursing class at Chamberlain, and that is in the form of something called CJ-SIM, which stands for Clinical Judgment Simulation, or EAQ quizzes. Maybe it's just EAQ, but it's called Elsevier Adaptive Quizzes, so EAQs. So those were the 2 relearning or remediations that we had to do. And if you scored low on your exams, then you would have to take more quizzes and do more simulations. If you scored high percentages on your exams, then you would have less quizzes and less simulations that you would have to do. Now, the whole concept of this relearning is relatively new. I think we only started it maybe 2 or 3 sessions ago. So for those of you guys that don't attend Chamberlain and you have a traditional semester instead of an accelerated semester, that's essentially a semester ago or a semester and a half ago. So this is a relatively new software and a relatively new layout. And when you're in your lower classes, you only have to do a certain amount of quizzes to hit a certain level of proficiency. And so when you're in your lower level classes, you take these quizzes until the system tells you that you are a novice in the subject. As you get farther into the program, you take these quizzes until you are considered to be intermediate. Once you reach collaborative health, you need to be hitting proficient in all of these quizzes. And so essentially what that means is that you're going to be quizzed more questions, and you're going to have to get more answers right in order for the software to kind of put you in the category of being proficient on these quizzes. So all of that is to say, it is a lot of work. It's very time consuming. It's not something that you can get done if you are procrastinating. And then as for the CJ Sims, for those of you all that are not familiar with CJ Sims, essentially it's a virtual simulation where there are an infinite number of scenarios, and there are scenarios in pretty much any nursing specialty you can think of. There are medical scenarios, surgical scenarios, leadership and management scenarios, community-based scenarios, maternity, pharmacology. So you go into different courses or different subjects, and you can pick a simulation just kind of randomly. And so the simulation that you pick has to coincide with a portion of the exam that you did not do well on. So when you're doing these relearning activities, you're looking at the exam that you took, you're going onto Elsevier's website, and you're looking up like a diagnostic report, and you're seeing what categories or what subjects you tested low in or you had a low score in. And so that is going to coincide with what CJ Sims that you're doing or what simulation you will select. And so in these simulations, you're given like a mock patient, a mock scenario, and you have to answer questions based on what's going on in the simulation, your patient's vital signs, and etc. And so that is the relearning activity. The relearning activity is a huge part of the assignments in this class. The other huge part of the assignments in this class are the Edapts. If you're a Chamberlain student, we have Edapts in every single course. I have videos on exactly what Edapts are and describing them. So I'm going to base this off of the fact that you guys already know what that is. This is a very, very, very Edapt heavy course. So usually in previous courses that I have had, each week you will have an Edapt to do. Typically you have 1 unit of Edapts, and then once you open up that unit, you may have anywhere from 3 to 6 modules of Edapts that you have to do, right? So for collaborative health, instead of having 1 unit per week, and then within each unit you have 3 to 6 modules, in collaborative health, you're going to have 3 units each week, and 1 unit's going to be on collaborative health, the other 2 units will be on NCLEX review. And then within each unit, there's anywhere from 3 to 6 modules that you have to do. So basically, the Edapts in this class are 3 times the amount of work than any other class that I've had at Chamberlain. So all in all, between the relearning assignments, which are constant and they're every week, and then the Edapt assignments, which are constant every week and 3 times the amount of work of what they have been in all my previous classes, this course was a lot of work. I cannot stress that enough. Even when I tried to work ahead in this class, I was behind. I have never been behind ever in nursing school, and in this course, as I was trying to work ahead, I was behind. So I cannot stress enough, you will not be able to stay on top of the work in this class if you procrastinate. And so that is it for the didactic portion of this class in terms of the exams and the work. Pretty much this class is literally just all exams, Edapts, and then your relearning assignments. It's pretty cut and dry. It's a lot of work, but you don't have any projects, you don't have any group work, you don't have any papers or anything like that. Now I'm briefly going to touch on clinical. For me, I got lucky, or what I considered to be lucky, and I was in the ICU this clinical. I went to a hospital in Maryland and I got to have clinical in the ICU. If you've seen my previous videos, you know I've been very fortunate, and this is, I think, my 4th ICU that I've been able to do clinical in, which is extremely special. I've fallen in love with the ICU. If anything, I feel more comfortable on an ICU unit than I do in any other unit at this point because I've had so many clinicals in the ICU. But this class was a 96-hour clinical rotation. So of course it's an 8-week class, 96 hours. So these were 12-hour clinicals. I was in the hospital from 6:30. It's supposed to be from 7 to 7, but really from like 6:30 until 7:30 p.m. every Saturday. except for one Saturday because we had a sim day, and I'm going to get into that. I do plan actually to make a more detailed video of what my clinical day entails, like what I do at the hospital every day. So I'm not going to get too much into that in this video because I'm scared it's already going to be too long anyway. But overall, I enjoyed my clinical experience. This was my first clinical in this hospital, so it was a new hospital for me. I'm glad I got to see what it was like because it's a really nice hospital. And my clinical instructor, I've had her before. She's my favorite clinical instructor. So I had a really good clinical experience all in all. But one major difference about this session, something that started this session, I don't know if it was just my campus or if it's all of Chamberlain, but a major change was something called a clinical immersion day. So the clinical immersion day actually replaced sim day. So in the past, for a 12-hour clinical where you have to go to the hospital all 8 weeks, typically you'd go to the hospital 7 weeks, and then there'd be 1 week where you go on campus with your clinical group, so your small clinical group of like 3 to 6 people, and your instructor, and you would do a simulation with them, and you'd spend 12 hours on campus doing that. This session, they eliminated sim day and they replaced it with something called clinical immersion. So clinical immersion was a full 12-hour day, and instead of just going to campus with just your clinical group and your clinical instructor, the entire cohort had to report to campus on the same day, and we all spent 12 hours on campus all at once with a bunch of faculty. We did do sim, so we did spend time in the sim lab, but essentially the layout of clinical immersion was that we all reported to campus at the same time in the morning. We were assigned groups that we would stay with the entire day, and we would spend the entire day kind of rotating to different stations. So one station was the sim lab. So there was like an hour or two where your group would go to the sim lab, you would do sim as if you normally would, but in addition to that, you had another station where you spent an hour or two doing med calc. So it was like a workshop where you did med calc. And then you would rotate and you'd go to another workshop where you practiced nursing skills in the lab. And then you'd go to another workshop where you would review didactic lessons on like infection control. And you would just kind of review things that you learned previously in nursing school. So essentially what it was, clinical immersion day, was one big workshop day where the entire cohort, both the evening and weekend students and the daytime students, merged for once, and we spent the entire day on campus kind of rotating to these different workshops for 12 hours. Now I will say I begrudgingly went to clinical immersion day, and I'll get into that. So clinical immersion day was mandatory. Just the same way that a sim day would be mandatory, this was mandatory. And I ended up actually liking clinical immersion day. I found it very useful, especially the different workshops. So like reviewing medical calculations and going over infection control and just kind of refreshing on skills that we learned over a year ago at this point, because now that we're getting ready to graduate, it is important for us to kind of be reiterating or reviewing these things, one for the NCLEX and two when we get out into the real world. I do think it's good to have a refresher on these things. So I actually did like the layout of clinical immersion day. It wasn't perfect, but I think they're going to perfect it as they go along. This was the first one, so I'll give them a pass on that. They were kind of probably, I guess, testing it out. We will be doing it next session, and so we'll be doing it moving forward, and I think it's a good thing. My biggest complaint about clinical immersion day was two things, one of which the school already kind of fixed. So number one, we found out a couple of weeks, if even that, before clinical immersion day, that this whole thing was happening. So we got an email like kind of saying, hey, sim is no more, we're replacing it with this thing. I didn't like the lack of notice that they gave us. They did fix that. They got a lot of feedback on that. And so for capstone, we're also going to be doing clinical immersion day. And they gave us a couple of months notice, which I really appreciate. The second issue that I had with clinical immersion day, my biggest issue that they have not fixed yet, is the fact that it is only offered once a session. It's in the first week of the session, by the way, but once a session during the day. I am an evening and weekend student. Half of my cohort, or a chunk of my cohort, we're all evening and weekend students. So for the daytime students, for them to come to campus for this clinical immersion day, it's nothing for them. They're used to coming to campus for those hours. For those of us in the weekend, the evening and weekend program, or the evening and weekend cohort, our classes are on campus weeknights after 6 p.m. So for most of us, myself included, we're doing things during the day. I work a full-time job, so in order to attend this clinical immersion day, I had to request off of work, get approved off of work, and then miss a day of pay. And I'm even fortunate that I was able to do that, as awful as that sounds, and it was not fun, but at least I'm lucky that I was able to do that. For some of my classmates, in addition to having jobs, or instead of having jobs, they have kids. So like I have one classmate who we're supposed to be there for 12 hours. We're supposed to report there by 6:45. Her daycare didn't open until like 7 or 7:30. So that's already an issue. So for me, I was just frustrated because we did reach out to the dean. We were very vocal in my cohort, which is why I love my cohort. But for us, we didn't see why there could not be 2 clinical immersion days, one for the daytime students during the week, and then one on Saturday. In the past, whenever we have gone to campus for sim, the evening and weekend students, we have had sim on Saturday or Sunday, whatever day we would normally be at the hospital. And so it was a lot for a lot of us. It was a massive inconvenience for a lot of the evening and weekend students to find a weekday. Like we all were just kind of told with I think like 2 weeks notice, you have to be on campus all day. They didn't care about any other arrangements that we had. And so that was my biggest gripe. And when we complained about it, they said that we could fill out a form and we would still have to make up the day, but that would excuse us for the clinical immersion day. We'd have to find another time to campus to make up those hours. That again is a big inconvenience. So my biggest feedback is that I think that they need to be more accommodating to the evening and weekend students, at least on my campus. Now my feedback for collaborative health. So I have been doing these like recap or review videos for a while now, since I started nursing school, where I take a class and then I kind of tell you guys what to expect and kind of like my experience taking it. And so this is the first video where I'm actually giving kind of like my 2 cents or my critique, just because I really didn't like the layout of this class. I felt like this session could have been utilized by the school in a different way. And I hate complaining just because the only way that I'm affiliated with my school is that I'm a student. And I know that there's been some questions about that in my comments. I don't work for the school. They don't ask me to make these videos. And so since I'm a student, that is the only way that I experience this university. I'm sure that there's information that I'm not privy to that leads leadership at school to make certain decisions. So for them to substitute sim day with clinical immersion, I'm sure that they had a good reason for that. I just don't know what the reason is. For them to require us to wear uniforms to campus when we're taking exams, to me it seems silly, but I'm sure that they have a reason for why they made that decision, and I just don't know what that reason is. So I'm sure that maybe they have a reason for why collaborative health is designed the way that it is, and I just don't know it. But I really would have hoped that this session would have been preparing students to apply for jobs and just really preparing us to transition from being nursing students to actually being nurses out in the real world. So my ideal layout for this course would have been, all of the material that we have learned in this course would have been that it was kind of spread out throughout our classes at Chamberlain up this far. So every class that we've taken, I wish they maybe kind of would have taken a unit from this class and sprinkled it into community, taken a unit from this class, sprinkled it into maternity, instead of having this class by itself. What I wish they did with collaborative health or with this session was for us to come into class and for us to be having mock interviews with our professor, like mock job interviews with our professor, having to come to campus dressed up for an interview and having our professor pretend to be an interviewer in a hospital. I would have rather had us learn about the different settings that we can work in once we become nurses, because you don't have to graduate from nursing school and go to the hospital. You can work in an outpatient clinic, you can be an at-home nurse. There's so many things that you can do, and I feel like nursing school, if you're lucky and you have a good professor, they might kind of touch on that, but for the most part they kind of lead you toward the hospital, and there's so many different options. And so I wish that this class was used to tell us all the different things that we could do with our degree. I wish that we had a class, like a class throughout this session that was dedicated to us making a resume or us editing our resume to make it attractive to employers. I wish that my professor went over what to look for. She kind of did, but I wish that She spent more time going over what to look for when you're looking at nurse residencies, what staffing ratios you should stay away from, kind of like helping us to prepare for applying to jobs and making sure that we had a job placement at the end of this class. And I don't really know what capstone the next class entails. I've kind of heard that we do a little bit of that in capstone, but to be honest, by the time we enter capstone, it's going to be March. We graduate at the end of April. So on my own, I've started applying to jobs as of me filming this video. I actually had an interview today, that's why I'm dressed the way that I am. But I saw nurse residency jobs being posted mid to late January. So if capstone really is going to help us with the stuff that I just mentioned, I feel like the school needs to be doing that earlier. Because yes, there will still be jobs available in March and April that people can apply to. But like I said, I saw nurse residency jobs being posted in mid-January. And then when I went back at the beginning of February, they were taken down. So those are already opportunities that some students are missing out on because they're so bogged down with the work and collaborative. They're just trying to tread water. They're just trying to stay above their work. It takes a lot of extra effort to make sure all of our work is done because there's a lot of work in this class. And then to use time to apply to jobs. I really wish that the focus of this time with school was prepping us for job placements. And then I wish that capstone was really just focusing on us passing the NCLEX. So I don't want to speak too much on capstone or criticize capstone because I haven't gotten there yet. I don't know what it entails. When I find out, I'll let you guys know. But I was just kind of disappointed this session. The first night of class, I was told, we were all told, everyone in my class was told that we were going to get like a mentor that was assigned to us that would help us find jobs, that the goal for the end of the class was that by the last day of class, we would all have job placements. That was the goal, and we were all really excited for that. As of me filming this video, I have less than 2 weeks of the class left. I have not gotten a mentor. No one has reached out to me, like no faculty has reached out to me to mentor me. No one's reached out to any of my classmates. And like I said, I've gotten job interviews, I've been applying to things, but all of that has been on my own time. And it's been really hard to work full time, stay on top of my work, and to apply to all of that. I really didn't feel like the school helped me prep for that in literally any way. And even though they don't have to, it's not up to the school to hold our hand to find a job. For me, my thing is Chamberlain's not a state school, it's a private school. We're paying private school tuition. My tuition's like $90,000. And then it was also told to us that we would get help applying to jobs. We would get a mentor. We would kind of have hand-holding. And so for that to be told to us, for us to be going to a private school, paying extra in tuition than a lot of other schools, you would think that that would be something that the school would give to us and that they would hold our hand with those things. So I was a bit disappointed that that was not what this class was. This class to me felt like a lot of busy work. And it's just kind of unfortunate. So I am going to do like one of those class reviews at the end of class. I'm going to be honest. I'm being honest on this video. Not to knock my professor. I like my professor. She's really nice. She's really knowledgeable. But I think it's just the layout of this course just seemed unproductive to me and to a lot of my classmates. So hopefully that'll change in the future. But unfortunately, this was my experience taking the class. It just felt like a busy work class, and it felt like a hurdle that I had to jump over to get my degree. It didn't actually feel like I learned anything in this class, or that it helped me prepare for the NCLEX, or that it helped me prepare for the real world, unfortunately. So yeah, so as of me filming this video, or as of me posting this video, I will be starting capstone in a couple of days. Hopefully that goes well. I'm really excited, and I'm just gonna prepare to take the NCLEX, keep applying to jobs, and keep making videos. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Good luck in your session.